Okay, let us wait for a minute or two. Just let attend like the other audience to join the room. Yeah, we are gonna like start today's talk in 1 minute. Okay, let's get started. Okay, so good evening, everyone. So like, welcome to our SEC weekly tech talk. So I hope everyone have a nice and warm Thanksgiving vacation. And so here's our like the weekly talk. So as usual, like let's start with our brief introduction to someone who may be a newcomer to this tech talk. So we are the Seattle Entrepreneurship Club, and we are the nonprofit organization which is established in 2008, and we offer a variety of services to help talents, investor, and professionals succeed in Seattle and North America. Also, we try to cooperate with organizations in different industrial and field to promote exchange of enterprise talents and culture between China and the US. And we will hold like the weekly talk and a monthly panel discussion and a semi-annual startup competition. We also offers a lot of like mentor program for startups. And you can see like on the screens, there is like the WeChat official account or QR code, and also like you can also like subscribe to our newsletter for our latest like the news, and also you can enjoy our live or the video like on the Seattle Entrepreneurship Club on YouTube. And today I believe like a lot of people in our audience already have some ideas about like to starting a startup or some excellent ideas, but like they don't know how to start. So as the proverb goes, like the well begun is half done. So like a good start is always like they can help people like to embark on a enlightening and challenging journey. So today we are very honored to have Kevin Yu to talk about like how to make the first step in the for a startup or business or company. So Kevin Yu like is very famous investor and like in the Seattle areas, and he will give a lot of like the detail or like some instruction or like the advice on how to start a startup. So okay, so let me hand off our stage to the Kevin Yu, and yeah.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, let me.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes. Let me stop sharing first. Yes.
All right. I'm going to share my screen. Give me a second. Can you see it?
Yes.
All right. Can everyone see the slideshow?
Yeah, maybe you can do the presentation.
Okay. Can you see the presentation mode?
No, still in the editor mode.
Oh, okay. How about now?
Yeah, looks good. Yeah.
Is that good?
Yeah.
All right. Good evening, everyone. First of all, it's my honor to come to SEC again and give this talk. SEC has been a great organization and just connecting entrepreneurs and our people, like-minded people. So let's start it out with like before we start talking about how to get started, let's talk about why do you want to do a startup. So there's some of us say, hey, I want to get rich quickly. So that's a myth, right? You're much more likely to lose money than to get rich quickly. And some other people say, yeah, I want to be my own boss. So that's another myth about startups. So when you need something from someone more than that person needs from you, he or she is your boss. You may think you are your own boss with a CEO, CTO title, but you actually have many more bosses, right? Because your investors, your customers, even some of your key employees, because you cannot afford to pay them high salaries. So essentially, you have many bosses. And some other people just want to do a startup because they can't solve a pain point or build something they really want to build in their current full-time job, right? And other people want to start a startup because they feel something is missing in their lives and they want to minimize the regret, right? And the story about how Jeff Bezos gets started is he worked for a Wall Street firm as a programmer after graduation. And one day he was talking to his boss, say, hey, I want to quit my job and sell books on the internet back in the early 1990s. And his boss told him, he's like, it's a good idea, but it's a better idea for someone who doesn't have a job, right? So after thinking this through, so Jeff Bezos still packed up and then moved to Seattle and started Amazon, right? So later he reflected on his decision and he said, it's like, a startup is that I knew that if I failed, I wouldn't regret it. But I knew that one thing I might regret is for not trying. And that has been guiding his life and his startup adventure. And he also talked to his brother the other day. Later, he said, I can choose a life of ease and comfort, or we can also choose a life of service and adventure, right? When you're 80 years old, looking back, you won't regret choose like service and adventure. So there's no right or wrong answer, like whether or not you want to go, you want to start your own startup. It's a preference. It's how much you want to tolerate this risk level. So startup is an adventure with high risk, yet unknown return, because 95% of startup actually fail. And you should only do the startup if you won't regret it every single minute of it, even you fail and lose everything you invest in it. So let's just briefly look at it, just like compare like being an employee versus being a startup founder, right? As an employee, you have stable income. And as a founder, it's for the early stage founder, you don't have an income. And you're probably most likely actually gonna lose your savings that invest in your startup. Again, you have, as an employee, you have one boss, but as like a startup founder, you actually have many bosses. And as an employee, you have one role and you have a support system like HR, you have like sales and marketing and IT, they all support you. But as a startup founder for early stage, you actually wear many different hats yourself. Like sometimes you can be customer service rep, and sometimes you're a programmer, and sometimes you're the CTO, and sometimes you just like go out there to raise the funding for the company. And as an employee, you have predictable hours, and as a startup founder, you have much less predictable hours. And as an employee, you rely mostly on your technical skills, especially if you're engineers. And as a startup founder, you actually rely heavily on your soft skills. And there's many like professional training opportunities in like some of the big firms there. And in a startup, it's like you pretty much learn on the job. And as an employee, you know what to do, walk into the office every day. But as a startup founder, it's like you set your own and your company's directions, right? As an employee, you most likely have little or no impact on your company's stock valuation. But as a founder, so your day-to-day decision will decide if your startup actually can live or die. So when we talk about startup, many of us probably gonna think of it as something like this. Right? It's just a couple of buddies. You spend a few months in a garage and to build something cool, and then you come out just sell them like a crazy, right? And then you become millionaires. Right? That day was long gone. So nowadays, the barrier of entry for startup is so low, right? Because cloud computing is online publishing platform and social media. Anyone that can build a website and market a product in hours or even minutes. So they're close to like 2 million like apps in iPhone store and close to like 2.8 million in Android. So what's the chance, for example, you build an app and you can just come out sell like crazy? Like it's close to zero. The startup ecosystem is getting more and more institutionalized, meaning professional institutions that support every stage of the startup. So it's important for startup founders to know these institutions so that they know where to get help when they need it. So friends and family usually provide some of the funding, early stage funding for founders to pursue their ideas before they have a product, before they have a customers. The angel investors are usually they are accredited investors who have over $1 million like in liquid assets, and they invest in early stage startup before VC run. And we all heard of VC, like venture capitalists. And some people ask, so do I raise the round in Seattle area or I go to the Bay Area, right? So Seattle has some VCs, but compared to the Bay Area, it's really like minor league versus major league. The Bay Area has much more VCs and fund size is much bigger. And you're probably gonna get better valuation in the Bay Area as well. So if you can raise in the Bay Area, by all means, right? But you may ask, why don't all founders just go fundraising in the Bay Area? Like first, there are a lot of startups, many of them very promising in the Bay Area. So competition is high, right? Second, so VC in the Bay Area, they may only want to invest in a Bay Area startup. Why? So because usually VC, after they invest in you, they will take a board seat, right? And instead of driving 20 minutes, they probably need to fly to Seattle or to your location like every couple of months to attend a board meeting, right? And some Bay Area VCs, if they're interested in you, they may ask you to relocate there as a prerequisite for their investment. So how VCs can help you, right? So yeah, of course, they're gonna give you funding. But it's actually much more than that, right? It's after investing in your startup, so VC, they have vested interest to help you grow. So they will help you like by mentoring you and help you to make some intros, and they even help you to recruit some of the key employees. So let's talk about like accelerators and incubators, right? So if you notice this, the title of this slide is from garage startup to this incubator startup. So startup accelerator incubators, they provide a workspace, seed funding, mentoring, and training for early stage founders, right? So the top two accelerators are Y Combinators and Techstars. So Y Combinator is in the Bay Area only, and Techstar, when I joined a Techstar 7 years ago, they only have about 5 or 6 locations in the US. Now they actually have 38 locations worldwide. And in the Seattle area, they also has a few like the incubators or accelerators, like Pioneer Square Labs, Madonna Labs, Unlock Venture Labs, Startup Heaven. They just came up with the lab as well, and Venture Out and TF Lab. TF Lab is specialized in blockchain projects. So those are some of the accelerators I know their founders or managing directors in person. And we also have mentors, advisors, and lawyers and bankers. And big corporation is also important part of a startup ecosystem because they have the corp dev department. They just scouting for startups so they can just either just partner with or actually acquire. So I just borrowed this like the picture from Adioma, and this essentially is how this startup funding goes. They started out with the ideal stage, and then just you and your co-founder just work on idea together, and then later family and friends they pitching and to support you and to pursue your idea, right? And by the way, it shows like 50-50 split, like in this in this picture. 50 actually is the worst allocation for if you have two founders for your startup, because the thing is, as a startup, it's like you can't guarantee you guys always gonna agree on everything. If you do, actually it's bad too, right? So in case you guys can't agree on things, 50-50 means you guys are going nowhere, right? That pretty much just kill the company. You can allocate just like close to 50-50 based on like some other factor, like who came up with idea, who pitching with more like funding initially, but 50-50 is the worst idea. So even though they put it here. And then you at the C stage, like angel investor and even sometimes the VC start joining. And after C round, you go through like series A, B, C, D, and etc. until the exit, right? When you talk about exit, you either go IPO or it's being acquired, or actually run out of a runway and then close down your startup. Okay, so what VC is looking for, right? So there's a saying in Chinese like 知己知彼, 百战不殆. But before you raise a round from VCs, you need to know how VC's business model works, right? So VCs are run by general partners, they call GP. And GPs, they have two jobs. The first one is they first need to raise the money from LPs, limited partners, who are accredited investors, and VC, yes, VC also need to raise money first before they give you the money, right? And the second job is VC is to select a startup to invest and then help them to succeed. So let's say a VC invested in 10 startups, right? 5 or 6 of them actually still gonna fail, right? And 2 to 3 may break even or generate some small profit. And they need one of them to become a moonshot that can deliver like 10x or even 100x return, right? That's how they make money, right? So now you understand how VC makes money, how VC's performance is measured, and now you understand it's like VC, they're always looking for a company that can become a moonshot, like they can deliver 10x or even 100x return, right? So now you understand it's like what VC is looking for when they try to screen a company, right? So first of all is big potential, right? It's a big potential market. So why not just say big market? Like, why don't we just say, oh, why VC is not look for big market? The problem with big market is there are way too many sharks swimming there already. For example, Google in this search ad space, AWS and Azure in the cloud computing, right? So ideally, the market is relatively small now, but it's growing rapidly, right? So that allows the startup to fly under the radar. So by the time big sharks notice the market, so the startup already established itself and can be killed easily. So what do you do as a big company then, right? So you buy them up, right? That's what the big corporation, they have a corporate debt, what they're doing there. As a startup founders, you want to sell like the painkillers are not vitamins, right? The pain point should be very acute. Why? Because when you're in pain, you'll pay any price to get painkiller, right? It's a necessity. Versus vitamin is just nice to have. So you can build a product. So and the other thing is that the VCs ask, why this team, right? Why you believe your team is uniquely positioned to take on this task, to build this business, right? So they're looking for a few things there. One is like each co-founder, they're good at what they do, right? So usually they're looking for the model is one builds and one sells. So you know how to build a product, and the other guy knows how to sell the product. And the co-founders, they should just work well together, and in good times and bad times, they know how to resolve the conflicts just productively, right? And they also want to see the founders, they have an industry experience, expertise, or insights. And they also want to ask the questions, why now, right? It's like not too early, but not too late, right? And maybe sometimes like you want to see these kind of micro level changes because certain regulations to make this new solution necessary or even viable. For example, after the Congress passed this e-sign law, the DocuSign just like is growing really fast because man, you just like e-signature has the same like legal like binding as this like handwritten like the signature. That allows the DocuSign to actually not only survive, actually just flourish. And also because of technological like advancements, and now it enables this new possibility to solve the old problem, right? Uber solved this taxi problem. Before the mobile, it's just like you can imagine if someone gonna carry a PC try to find a taxi, right? Uber, because the mobile just like popularity of these mobile apps, now Uber is making it possible, and with the GPS, it made it possible to actually just call a cab just like from your phone. And then a VC is looking for secret sauce. So secret sauce is startups' ability to do something like nobody else can easily replicate, right? VC is also looking for traction. The traction can be like early adopters, the feedback, or product usage, or a fast growing like customer base, and it's a fast growing like revenue. And they also want to know just like how you can compete, right? You can establish moat or barriers to entry, right? And it's like you can build a product, that doesn't mean you know how to sell it, right? So they want to see you have a convincing go-to-market plan, how you're going to reach your customers and convince them to buy your product. So there's some common mistakes that new founders they tend to make when they're pitching to like a VC. It's like, oh, we don't have competitors, right? So when you say you don't have competitors, that means either there's no market or need for your product, or you're ignorant about your competitors, right? And people also, the second mistake that people tend to say is, oh, the market size is huge, it's X billion dollars, we just need 1%, right? So yes, the market is big, but there are hundreds or even thousands of startups competing for that pie, right? So what makes you believe you actually can grab this 1% or even 0.1%? So, and then it's like people say, oh, it will go viral, right? We have this viral feature. It's like just because you have a like or share button doesn't mean it will go viral, right? Because we all have dozens of apps on our phone, right? How many times and how many apps do you actually share with your friends every day? Right, think about that. Okay, after you decided, okay, now you decided startup is right for you. So what do you do, right? So build a strong professional and personal reputation, right? It doesn't matter you work in a big company or you want to go start up. Your personal reputation, professional reputation is gonna go a long way to help you. And read startup books, news, and stories. So Steve Blank, who is a professor at Stanford, he and Eric Rice started the lean startup movement. So he has a good list of recommendations for startup books. And then pursue idea as a side project. But you gotta be very careful there, following the rules, right? So first is you don't use employers like equipment and resources. The second is don't do it during your office hours, right? Don't use your employees' proprietary information, trade secrets. And you may also need to report your side project to employers first to get approval, right? And the reason you don't do that is, one, it's like you don't end up get fired. The second thing is, if you do any of that, potentially your employer can sue you for IP, right? Just like, okay, you use my equipment, that means that your IP, whatever IP you develop, it belongs to me, right? They can make this claim. And then you can collaborate with other people, like friends and coworkers who share your startup passion. And you can, and no matter what you do it like part-time or full-time. So make sure you do the customer development before this product development. Don't spend like 6-9 months to build something and then no one wants it. That's the number one reason like a startup failed, because they thought they built something people gonna buy it. No, right? It's like you need to make sure the market is there first. And you should also start saving for your startup runway, right? Minimum is 1 year, because the thing is the goalpost for get funding from VC is get pushing out every day, right? It's getting harder and harder to the bar is getting higher and higher for startup to get funding there. And make new friends and startup events like SEC events or through this introduction, right? There's a bunch of meetup. For example, there's another like startup poker event I tend to go, which is it's invitation only for startup founders and some of investors, right? So for example, I hired my chief product officer for my first startup from this like a startup poker event when I playing poker with some friends there. And join Accelerator. So why join Accelerator? So Accelerator will give you like 3 things, like mainly 3 things. The one is like startup knowledge, right? They will teach you how to do it, like a customer development, right? How to do a fundraising. And then usually Accelerator, they have many like mentors, like supporting them, helping them. And you're gonna be able to tap into their network. And then Accelerator also has this signal effect, especially some of the top accelerators like Y Combinator or Techstars, because the thing is, people feel like, okay, just by the fact you've made it into the top accelerator, they already screen you, right? So they tend to they are more willing to write the check for you. Or if you decided startup like founder is like not the right choice for you, or because of funding, because some other reason, it's also good to join a startup. They already have some like validation. For example, you can see product adoptions, revenue growth, a partnership. They have been recently funded by some VCs, or they recently been admitted into the accelerator program. Like for example, Techstar every year, Seattle cohort, they have about like they receive hundreds like applicants, and they only admit like 10 of that, right? So those are professional like VCs. They screen those startups. So let's say you decided to do a startup. So who are your customers? Is your customer business or your customer like a consumer, right? So if we heard of this like B2B versus B2C, B2B means you sell to business, like, and when you sell to business, it's value driven. A business, like they buy a product, it's not because they just like, oh, it looks cool, right? The reason like the rental company, for example, Hertz, they bought like 100,000 like a Tesla, it's not because, oh, it's cool, right? Because it makes economic sense for them, because consumer want to rent the Tesla, and because it's much easier to maintain, and not because it looks cool. Consumer, they buy Tesla, it's because it's cool. And usually B2B, there's a much longer selling cycle. Usually we're talking about like several months. And when you sell to B2B, they tend to have multiple people involved in the decision making. It's not just one person just say, oh yeah, I'm gonna buy this, right? And consumer is like usually gonna be individual and sometimes small group decisions there. And when you're doing a B2B, you need to build a deep relationship with a relatively small number of clients, right? If you're in a B2C, and you need to build a brand and among a large user base. And some of the B2C companies, they started out as B2C, but they successfully moved into the B2B. Like Microsoft, initially they sell Windows, and gradually just like people just say, I want to use the Windows in my work station as well, right? And then Microsoft starts selling to business there. And what is B2B2C? B2B2C means it sell to the business, and business to sell your product to their consumers, right? So for example, my current company, Dignify, essentially we sell to the dealers like Mercedes or Lexus or like Toyota or Hyundai. And those we partner with 8,000 like dealers around the country, and those dealers, they sell to the consumers. So once you start doing the startup, it's like people know it's like, oh, it's revenue. Like actually, there's a few like important metrics to measure your startups the traction. Right, one is like, yeah, obviously it's the annual like monthly recurring revenue, and then it's like a monthly churn rate. That's something like investors look very closely. Right, just like let's say you have $1 million just like revenue, but every month you lose like 10% of that. Right, your monthly churn rate is like 10%. So that means on average, your customer just like stay with you only 10 months, right? And the customer lifetime value would be, if there's one customer, if on average one customer stay with you for like 10 months, let's say this customer pay you like $100, right? In that case, so you're getting like $10,000 like customer like lifetime value. Customer lifetime value is important in a sense like they decide whether or not and how much money you can invest in marketing sales, right? And then we look at this runway in months, like this total funding, and then divided by your average like monthly burn rate. So this is some of the important like metrics for the SaaS companies there that the VC tend to look for. Okay, blockchain is really hard these days, right? So blockchain is once in a generation this opportunity. So every time this new platform comes along, like PCs, internet, mobile, and now it's a blockchain plus metaverse. So they will disrupt many industries and create a new generation of unicorns, right? So internet enables free exchange of information, and blockchain enables free exchange of values, right? As of this morning, for example, we already have like more than 100 like cryptocurrency unicorns, right? I mean, when you say unicorn, means there's more than $1 billion market cap. So every blockchain project like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Chainlink, Decentraland, Swap, it's like a startup. Like they bring their own value proposition and the use cases to the table. Right? For example, Bitcoin is a store of value. It was born after like 2008, like a financial crisis. Like people lost trust in this centralized bank. Right? Ethereum is the de facto standard for the smart contract. Solana essentially tries to solve the two problems Ethereum has. So one is the scalability, and the other one is the high gas fee, right? A Chainlink, for example, is just like they try to connect this the real world to this blockchain world, right? It's to provide this data service for the smart contracts running inside the blockchain. And Decentraland is the metaverse built on top of blockchain. Uniswap is a decentralized exchange, right? They bring their own value and proposition and the use cases, right? So ICO and IEO, it's just like initial coin offering and initial like exchange offering. They already disrupted the VC industry, right? You don't, for example, you don't have to be an accredited investor with more than $1 million liquid asset to invest in these blockchain projects, right? And the founders, so usually it's like you start a company, you work hard on it, you grow it for 5-10 years before you can go IPO. But nowadays, it's a lot of just like those ICOs, they just go out and raise, they write some like white papers, right? And they can raise like tens of millions of dollars there, right? Essentially, they started out, almost think about this as like upside down like IPO. You go out there to raise the money first, and then you use a portion of that, the money, the fund you raised to embark on the product development, right? So at this point, it's like there's no clear like SEC regulation yet, right? Other than they just say, oh, there's a utility token and a security token. So this blockchain overall is providing it's a new platform and potentially can bring many opportunities there. All right, in summary, so startup isn't for everyone, right? It's like just follow this and minimize your regret, right? To decide whether or not startup is right for you, right fit for you, right? Because the thing is, if you think about it, it's like, okay, if you invest the savings in your startup, and let's say 2 years, a year or 2 years from now, you're gonna lose everything, right? Are you gonna regret it? And then another way to look at it is like 80 years, when you're 80 years old, looking back, just do you regret you actually didn't try it, right? And you need to know the startup ecosystem, right, including the VCs and incubators, right? So you know when to get help, where to get help when you need it. And yeah, you should understand like a startup funding, like, because it's like that's probably most important thing to keep your startup going, right? And you need to understand the VCs, the business model, and what they're looking for, and when you talk to them, right? And I also give you a few suggestions in terms of how you can get started, right? And blockchain and metaverse, they're this new platform, and they bring many like exciting opportunities for startups. All right, that's it for today's presentation, and then I'll just save the rest of the time for any Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin, for your presentation. So like anyone like who has like question, like you can just raise your hand, click the raise hand button. I will see you and just unmute you and you can just ask. Okay, so, okay. We have some question from David Wong.
Hi.
David Wong. Yeah,
Yes.
you can go ahead.
I have a question. So, like, what are the ways to generate generate ideas? Like, how do you find the great ideas they can start with, and then find the market fit?
Yeah. So there are two ways people they tend to want to brainstorm some ideas. One, they start from problem, right? And some people like to start from technology. Oh, there's new technology. How are you going to be able to use that technology in different areas, right? So my personal recommendation would be you start with a problem, right? Because the thing is, if you start with technology, when you're just holding like a hammer, everything is a nail to you, right? So you want to start with a problem, and then the more acute the problem, the pain point is, the bigger opportunity is for you, right? Essentially, if you attack a problem, and then technology is just a means to the end. So that's why earlier I mentioned is just like, if you have like unique like what VC is looking for, right? If you have like a industry experience, expertise, or insights, right, you're going to be able to identify some of the problems like that other people may not be able to. Right? For example, one of the companies like I invested is from last year's Techstars, right? So the founder, he worked in like Apple as a hardware engineer for many years. And he clearly saw is like there's no hardware tools allow you to really review the designs very efficiently and track all the hardware designs like this the GitHub doing for the software code, right? And anytime you try to revise the design, or sometimes you need to communicate to your supplier or manufacturer, it's just very painful, right? Even a big company like Apple has this problem. You can imagine any other like a smaller like hardware companies, they're probably going to have a similar problem, because even a big company like Apple and produce the iPhones, they have this pain point, right? So they have this unique insights to say, okay, here's the problem the big company like Apple facing, and the other company has similar problem. I'm going to come up with a solution. How are you going to be able to track every like hardware design changes, like I track this software changes like GitHub, right? So the way is like look for the problem. Like the more acute the problem is, the bigger opportunity is, because the incentive for change is stronger, and people can see that as a painkiller. See your product as a painkiller.
So, okay, so let me summarize it. So basically, maybe a better way is to like maybe get some industrial experiences, maybe from the work. Like you find some issues that currently has not been solved, and then you're just come up with some ideas and what are better ways to do it.
Yeah. So industry experience is one, and sometimes for the consumer product, it can be the personal problems you experience, right? For example, like Uber. So the two co-founders started Uber because they traveled to Paris, and on a rainy night, they couldn't get hold of this taxi. And they're just thinking just like, okay, I couldn't get the taxi. What if all the cars, like people have a car, they actually can give us a ride and we just pay some money to those guys, right? That's from their personal problem, right? And same thing like with Airbnb, because those two co-founders, they were just too poor to just like to keep this apartment rented. It's like to rent a completed apartment. They were thinking just like, okay, can we just rent it out a room and then so we can stay in that apartment, right? From their personal problem, right? So if you're in a B2B space, this kind of industry experience and insights probably help you the most. But for the consumer space, it can be the problem you experience every day, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, for questions or like, yeah, just anyone. Oh, by the way, like anyone, like you can both in the English or Chinese, but are both okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So by the way, I was presenting this in English just mainly because many of the like terminologies and it's like names, it's just like much easier. I don't even know how to translate that in Chinese. Yeah, so when you ask questions, feel free to ask whatever in English or Chinese. So I can answer in both, in either.
Yeah, okay. Next question from Lucas Tong. Yeah. Yeah, Lucas Tong, you are okay to ask? Yeah.
Hi, yeah, I have a question about the painkillers and vitamins question.
Yeah.
So if you have a product that could sort of fit into both the market for painkillers and vitamin, is it better to focus on sort of a subgroup and a niche group that is more of a painkiller?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it might require a higher like bar to entry because it might become a medical device then instead of a consumer device. So that's sort of that.
Yeah, so if you can become both painkiller and vitamin, even it may be a little bit harder to go after the market, but I would say you have better chance of success. Because the reason not to go with vitamin is, first of all, even though it's easy for you to reach the market, but you're gonna have a much harder time to convince your buyers to actually buy your product, right? The second thing is, if you're running a SaaS business, it will be much harder for you to keep that customers around because they use your product for months and then they just say, oh, this is just nice to have. And if in the B2B space, every time there's a new like marketing director come along or like a sales director come along, they look at it like, why do we buy that? Why do we need that, right? It's actually, you're gonna have a much higher churn rate. Like churn rate is number one killer for like SaaS companies because you couldn't keep a customer long enough and to make economic sense.
Sounds good, thank you. Yeah, so even if it might cost more money to become a painkiller and sort of have more barriers, it's better to try that first. Okay.
Yeah, because the moment they latch on, they use your product, they can't live without that anymore, right? They will keep paying you.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I can see some question from the Q&A board. So Sarah's question from Anthony Lay. So when is a good timing on incorporating a legal structure for a startup?
Yeah, so the moment you guys want to just one is like you have some like you have some minimum viable product, right? And you guys start actually pursuing, especially if you guys already start thinking. So one is like you already have some kind of intellectual property, right? And you want to formalize it so that you protect its IP. And also it's just like depends on when you're gonna start like raise the fund, right? The moment you start raising the fund, for sure you're gonna need incorporate.
Sounds good. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think Jingjia raise his or her hand. Okay. Okay. You are allowed to talk. Yeah.
谢谢啊，凯文。我叫那个我叫贾进。那个我们公司是托迪，对，我们是做那个 wearable，就是 tracking 那个就是硬件加软件加那个cloud 一套整套的方案，就是做那个 就是 lifting 啊、weight training 啊这些的那个 tracking 你的那些 metrics。我们已经量产了硬件，我们做了4年。然后原来我们是做 to B 的，说中国国家举重队呀都是我们的客户。然后但是我们现在改成 to C 了，把我们的方案简化了，做成大概$100左右的这么一个硬件，这么一个就是 tracker。就是我看你是在那个Jack Strauss 做过是吧？对。
Yeah。
对，然后我觉得你可能了解这个整个这个 fitness 啊 wearable 这个 industry。然后呢，我想是我们大概是准备1月初，就是 Kickstarter。然后我们的 APP 什么的和那个硬件都已经2代硬件在生产，然后1代硬件已经量产，然后客户都在，就是我们都在小面积的试用。就是这种情况，我想请教一下我怎么去找 funding。对，然后就说是我们现在是美国有注册的公司，然后国内也有注册。我现在在深圳。对，因为我们在生产。对，所以说我们都有。但是这种情况下，我们怎么操作比较好？比如说是用我们的美国公司去融资找 funding，然后我需不需要人必须回美国去，然后去这样，就是想听一下这个整个 fitness 这块儿，然后去哪儿？比如说在西雅图还是在去加州那边，还是找什么 Peloton 这些大公司去跟他们聊，看看有没有可能合作。对。
OK， 所以你要找 Peloton， 你意思是说想找他的 distribution channel， 不是找 funding 对吧？
也是找 funding 啊，因为我们做的技术它跟它互补的，对吧？我们这套技术也做了1-2年了，然后他们如果做，他们投入比我们大，然后何必不投资我们呢？或以后收购我们？对。
OK， 就是大公司的话，像 Peloton 这种公司，他如果投你，他一般会有这种 partnership， 通过 partnership 就是说 OK， 我买你的东西，然后就是说，因为他不太可能就是说作为一个 VC 来投你，他有可能就是通过 partnership。如果你做到一定程度，他也有可能先是 partnership， 然后通过 partnership 再 acquire 你。如果就是他觉得有这个必要，就决定要 bring 这个 product in house， 他不会像 VC 那样一开始就投你，因为他作为一个他自己也是一个 startup， 对啊，他 startup 就是说一般来说。不过他现在还好，就是说他现在已经是个 public traded company， 他会有一些这个资金，但他的资金一般是用来就看弥补他产品的一个空缺，比如说他有一个空白，然后他觉得这个市场他想进入，他一般就是大公司都会做这种 buy versus 这个 build， 对吧？是我自己 build 的呢，还是就是说我就是 buy another smaller company， 然后他们填补他产品上的一些空缺。所以就是说，他很多时候他是先跟你 partner， 然后看这个产品，比如说跟你的匹配的程度。然后就是说看市场销量，如果确实不错的话，他可能会不应有 in house。所以就是你如果直接想就是从他拿到投资的话，可能性就是不太大，对吧？所以就说对，这是一个。另外一个就是说，在 VC 这个领域呢，就是它也非常的这个细化，就是有的是做这个，比如说专门做这个 SaaS 做这个 AI 的，对吧？有的是专门做这个硬件的。所以呢，你要去融资的话，就是你要找这些，就是他们一看的说，在这个领域。他们比如说以前投 Peloton 的，或者以前投其他硬件公司的，你去找这些 VC，你知道吧？所以就是因为这个就是因为是这种机构化的 institutionalized 这种 startup 的这个 ecosystem， 就是这个每个行业，它现在越来越越来越专业，越来越细分。所以就像比如说 Seattle 这边的很多这个 VC， 他们基本不投这个硬件的，他们就是基本上。投的比较多的就是这个 SaaS 啊 ，Software as a Service， 或者这种这个 AI 这个领域的，对。对，另外一个就是说，就是中国跟美国之间这种投资。现在就是说，你如果公司现在是在中国的话，你可能来美国融资比较困难，因为现在就是说，因为中美之间这种就是说比较竞争或者激烈这种对抗的这种关系，所以就是说。因为美国这边 VC 很多时候他们不太愿意再投中国的公司，除非就是说你在美国这边注册一个公司，然后拥有完整的 IP。
是我们现在 IP 都算在美国公司。对，我们是先注册的美国公司，然后做了一段时间，然后回国内嘛，做硬件这边这个产业链，所以说是为了产业链，但是实际上还是在美国这边。对，
你要是美国的公司拥有这个 IP 的话，你就可以在美国融资。然后就是说你的制造在国内这没有关系，像 Peloton 这很多 bike 也是在中国制造的。
对。 然后想请教一下，就是我们现在其实没拿过融资，然后我们自己就把这事儿做的差不多了，就是说是现在还不能就是说是盈亏平衡，但是一众筹就能盈亏，众筹或销售就能盈亏平衡，在亚马逊上，然后呢这些渠道国内我们现在也有一些前期客户，原来都是 to B 的客户，我说 to C 这边，因为我们就为了做 to C，把 to B 那边就停了1年。就是开发呀，然后呢，我们就这种情况下，而且我们这个比较 niche 的一个 market， 我们有没有必要去找投资？就是我们自己也能做起来，然后也能销售，也能盈亏平衡，就是能把这事儿做成。对，
你要是自己能智慧盈亏，如果不需要融资，你就能发展的就是挺快的话，那就你当然不需要融资了，对吧？这个你要是自己能自给自足，然后利用自己的自有资金能够 sustain 的这个 growth， 很多时候就是一个是融资，就是说你现在就是自己还没有足够的 revenue， 对吧？这是一个情况。另外一个情况，你要融资是因为你要加快这个发展的速度，比如说你自己发展，你可能每年你 grow 这个 10-20%， 对吧？但是因为这个在 startup 这个机会是稍纵即逝的，你现在可以 grow 10-20%， 也许2年3年之后，这个 market 就会被一个是不存在了，另外一个有可能被其他公司抢走，对吧？你要是觉得这机会很好，你这个时候 instead of growing like 10-20%, you want to grow like 100 or 200%. In that case, you probably need to bring a VC money. 就是那个，如果你觉得你现在的增长率并不理想，你可以增长的更快，如果有更多的资金进来，对吧？那个时候，因为这个 startup 这个机会稍纵即逝，你不要以为就是现在就说卖的不错，对，明年就一定卖的不错，这个东西很不好说，没准明年 Peloton 进来，他自己有这个产品了，对吧？所以很多时候就是 VC 就是 it comes with a cost， 就是你从 VC 的融资之后，你会牺牲一些自主权，对吧？比如说 VC 一般肯定会拿一个 bossy， 他对你到底怎么发展，他就会有一些这个想法跟看法，跟你的想法跟看法不一定完全一致，对吧？所以就说，
对，但是关键是融资很费时间。我本人就是负责开发的一部分，就说是没时间天天跟这些 VC 聊，挺费时间的跟他们，而且大部分没结果，谁有时间陪他们去找啊，去那个花几个月时间跟这儿谈跟那个谈的，还到处跑。原来我找过，就是嫌跟他们费时间，有这事儿我们自己都做了，对吧？就是说，其实钱也，关键是对这个东西深刻的认知和你们的技术积累。就是做的慢了点，但是你一旦把这事儿做成了，其实 VC 那个钱，你说又招人，我们这技术我们都做出来了，招人有什么用啊？就是说过来学我们东西，就是我们自己做成了。问题是，就是你说他做的好点，帮助销售，这些都是怎么说呢？不是那么核心的事儿，确实能帮一些忙，加速，但是这个市场又没那么大。就是我们比如做专业运动员这个市场，对吧？这个是相对专业的人才会对这种自己的 metrics 那么在意。这个市场又没那么大，又不是说普通健身者乌泱的一大堆人，像 Keep 呀，像 Peloton 那个市场，对，所以说这个市场也不会有一大堆人是过来抢，而且又有硬件又有软件，还有算法，这个东西还挺难的。坦率的说 ，Peloton 也得搞个1年，他找人也得搞1年，就是说是这个我还比较自信，就是说不是那么容易做的，就是说，对，不是代表就是他没有市场上没有现成的东西。它得积累大量的数据，然后积累算法，然后迭代硬件，然后迭代所有这些都要迭代。技术的照我们抄它要迭代，对，就是因为它算法它抄不了嘛，对，然后那个它数据它得积累嘛，对，所以说就这种情况我也想不出来，就是因为找这些投资者太费时间，你知道吧？我有这时间，我做产品的时间都不够，就是感觉这是我的苦恼，对。
对，首先是看你有没有这个需要，就说你要是觉得这个增长率已经很满意，那你没有必要。如果你自己就说能够自负盈亏，自己增长率又满意，对吧？你要没有
增长肯定不行，增长肯定人不够啊，肯定增长销售那边不够，人不够。但是销售那边这边招点个人，那也花不了多少钱，对吧？就是亚马逊呐，维持，对，这个花不了多少钱，不需要找个 VC， 对吧？就是说，对。就是说这怎么说呢？推广那边 VC 一旦你这个核心算法什么做完了 ，VC 那边的助力我想不出来，除非他能帮助我，不是，比方说他有关系，能帮助我就是搞定像你这种 partnership 的大单，这种是他的助力，就是能搞成大客户，或者是能搞这是我觉得他的助力，对吧？对，
所以就一个是要找就是对你这个领域了解的 VC， 就我刚才说了，像有些 VC 只投软件或只投 AI， 对吧？像你要找就是对这个领域了解，所以就是说一般来说他对这个领域了解，他投这个领域，他对这个领域的很多这些大的公司都会有就是千丝万缕的联系。
对。哎，那个您能加一下您的微信吗？就是说是对那个。
可以，我们可以会后可以那个让那个组织者可以把我的微信分享一下。
好，谢谢你啊，哎，
不客气，
多谢凯文，非常感谢，哎。
好，很感谢你的提问，也很感谢 Kevin 的回答。然后我这边还有一个问题是，What are the ways to generate a great idea for startup？ 然后其实针对这个问题，其实我还有一个就是说，如何就比如说，当你有一个想那个创业想法的时候，你如何去确定这个想法是可行的，或者是值得去创业的一个事情？
对，就是我之前有一个 startup 叫做 Markly 其实就是说解决了这个问题，但是 Markly 是从那个 Pioneer Square Lab 这个 VC spin out 出来的，就说他当时就是他这个 VC 又帮着很多 startup 就是解决一个什么问题呢？就是说很多人有个想法，就是这个想法到底有多大的市场，他不知道，对吧？你可能跟几个人聊，大家觉得这很有意思，就我会用，但是就是说到底是10个人，还是100个人，还是1万个人，还是100万人？都有类似的需求，就是说你是怎么解决这个问题。所以就说当时我们就是用 AI 就是说做了一个产品，就是说就是你不一定要用 AI， 但就是说这个 idea 是类似，就是很多时候你可以去测试这个 market， 就是怎么去测试呢？比如说是 consumer 这一块，你就说根据你这个产品这个解决的这个痛点和这个你的这个 value proposition， 比如说你是帮大家省时间啊，你是帮大家节省的成本啊，对吧？然后就是说你用这些呢，这个你针对的这个受众就是有 target customer， 他们要做的这些工作，然后你能给他带来的这个 benefit， 做一些这个关键字，把这个关键字呢放到这个 Google AdWords 上，对吧？或者放到那个 Facebook 的那个 advertising 那个 ads 上，然后你就 run 一些 ads， 比如说一天，比如说 run 个10块钱、20块钱或者100-200块钱的这种。你就可以看看这个 click through rate 到底就是有多少人就是对你这个 value proposition 感兴趣，知道吧？因为你可以接触到的人还是有限，你今天可以跟10个人谈、100个人谈，那还是非常有限的。那就说你相当于就是你就 run 这个 app， 到底看有多少人，就是你可以放一个 landing page， 就是说我这个产品能做这个1、2、3， you put some bullet points there， 对吧？你可以解决的什么问题？你看看多少人 click through， 然后多少人去 sign up， 比如说你的 beta， 你说现在这个就是你在 collect email for beta launch， 你看有多少人感兴趣，对吧？就说很多人觉得就是自己平时碰到的问题，然后就觉得我有个想法能够解决这个问题，但就是不是特别清楚到底有多少，这个市场到底有多大，所以就是说你可以就是用这些 ads 去测试，现在就是到底大概多少人对这个真的感兴趣。
就是我能理解，就是说它这类似一个问卷调查一样的形式吗？
对，问卷调查，你首先要知道你问卷要发给谁呀，对吧？你发一个问卷，但是你毕竟你每个人这个 network 毕竟都有限嘛，对吧？所以就是你能认识的几十个人或者几百个人，是你这个潜在的那个受众 target customer， 但就是说你想 reach out 就 beyond your network is very difficult， 对吧？那就是相当于你可以 run 这些 ads， 就是 put together landing page， 然后你就是 run 这个 ads， 看多少人到你的 landing page， 然后 sign up， 对吧？所以这个就是通过这个利用这个，
就相当于就是
做个广告就是，假如说你现在有产品了，你先不要花时间去 build 这产品 ，build 产品之前呢，你先看看这个有多少人对你的产品感兴趣。你要是很多人都感兴趣，你每一天的 click through rate， 比如说 50%， 或者就是 10% 吧，也非常好了，对吧？然后你看有多少人，你要很多人对这个感兴趣，都有这个痛点，都觉得你这个给他带来很好的 benefit， 那你就是要 onto something， 对吧？这个时候你再去就是开发的话，你就有的放矢。不要就是说你花个6个月时间吭哧整出一个东西，然后没人用，没人买。
是的，是的，对，事先找到一个方向很重要。对，
没错。
对，这边就有观众顺便提问，就是说您刚刚提到那个 app 是叫啥名字？
我们那个 app 后来被那个 Pioneer Square Lab 它收回去了，就是我们做了之后，他们就把我们给做的那个 app 收到他们自己的那个，他们自己在用 internal 在用，他没有。我们开始用的就是后来就是我们卖给了那个几个 startup， 就是我们的客户，然后加州一个 VC， New York 一个 VC 都在用我们的东西。后来那个 Pioneer Square Lab 就觉得这东西还不错，所以他们就是自己用的，现在就是没有对外公布。对。
哎呀，可惜。
但就是这 idea 是一样的，你们可以自己 run， 就根据这个产品你提供的这些 benefit， 对吧？然后你就自己去 run。对，
是的。好，行，大家还有什么有提问的话，可以就在那个直接那个点一下那个举手的那个按钮，我这边就直接让大家可以直接上提问。OK， 这边看到有，对，在那评论里面有问，就是说什么样的 threshold 算好的 conversion rate？So
click through rate 是 depends 啊，因为这每个 keywords 就是你要看它的同类的 keywords， 因为你放进去的 keywords 里面都是就是类似的嘛。因为你放了10个 keywords 以后，比如说有就是这个，因为每一个 keyword group 它的 conversion rate 它 click through rate 都不太一样。对吧？比如说 travel 的 click through rate 一般来说都比其他的 keyword 要高一些，所以就是说，但是就是说你不能跟 travel 的比，如果你的这个 idea 不是跟 travel 有关的，所以就是你要看 Google AdWords 里面的 click through rate 的话，你不能就是说这种横向的比，你只能就是说你比如说你有这么个 idea， 然后你这个 idea 呢，你有那么几个 benefit， 你就比较那个 benefit 的时候，你看到哪一个 benefit is most appealing， 比如说你要决定到底哪个 feature 是对他们最有用，因为你有个 idea 要解决这个问题，有很多方式可以解决这个问题，然后可以给 user 带来不同的 benefit， 你就看哪一个 benefit， 就是说，因为相当于就是说你必须有一个固定的坐标，固定的坐标就是你的 target customer， 同样的 target customer 看到你这个比如说你的3个 benefit， 某一个 benefit 就 stand out， 它的 click through rate 比其他2个要高好多。那就是说you're onto something with that particular benefit， 但是你不能就说没有一个 general 的，就是说我这 click through rate 就是如果是5%还是0.5%就是好的，对吧？所以因为这个每一个这个 industry 它每一个这个 keyword group 它的这个 click through rate 都不太一样，而且这个东西也在变。比如说 email marketing， 最早的时候你可以达到30-40%的 click through rate， 因为 email 刚刚开始的时候。那你猜现在的 email marketing click through rate 是多少？你要能拿到2-3%的这个 click through rate 就已经不错了，就是因为这个就降了好多，这个东西也在不停的变。
是的，现在传媒的方式越来越多，
没错，
需要具体的那个做的东西，然后具体的行业具体分析了。好，行，这边还有什么问题？大家可以，这边有我看到Derek Wang。OK，
那个谢谢你刚才提的那个我觉得是对我来说非常重要的一个信息，所以我想问一下，就是你刚才说的那个放一些 keyword 上面，是我先建一个那个website 其实还是建一个那个就是假的 website 上面放一些我想要做的那个 keyword， 然后去看一下有多少人到我的网站来访问，是吗？
对，就是不是说假的 website， 它这个 technique 叫 landing page， 有很多这个有很多 tool， 对，比如 landing log 呀，就是它给你提供这种所谓的 landing page。landing page 其实一般的就一页，这一页呢就讲述你这个产品的这个 benefit 到底能给你的这个受众 target customer 带来什么好处，带来什么益处，对吧？然后你就看，假如说你现在，因为你想象一下，你比如说你花了6个月做的产品。做完产品之后你该干什么？你不就要做 marketing 吗？你想想，假如说你现在作为一个时间超前的这个 time traveler， 你比如说 travel 到6个月之后，假如说你现在已经有产品了，那你看看这个产品到底有多少人对你这个产品感兴趣。比如说你现在有3个不同的 idea， 那你就说你这个3个 idea 每一个 idea 你就做一个 landing page， 对吧？
对。
那就说然后你就 run 这个 ad， 看看你这3个 idea 到底哪一个 idea 这个 click through rate 是比较高。然后就是很多人都去 sign up， 所以
那个这个 click through rate 我到哪儿能看到呢？
你 run 那些 ads 的时候，它会那些 Google AdWords 呀，或者这个
Google AdWords，OK，
或者 Facebook Ads 呀，它都会告诉你，那些 Instagram 就是那些这个 advertising 的这个 platform， 它都会告诉你 click through 的有多少人看了，有多少人 click through。然后呢，到了你自己的 website 呢，你一般都要放一个，就是说 sign up for beta， 就是你就说 OK， 如果 beta 如果 publish 之后，我就会通知你，你看了多少人，因为很多时候你到了 website， 别人看一眼就是没人 sign up， 对吧？那就是说别人就看了你这个具体的 benefit， 就觉得就是不产生价值对他们来说，对吧？
对，
甚至有些人可以用这个作为这个测试这个 pricing 的，比如说你现在有一个产品，假如说你现在还没有产品，大家想看看这个产品到底能卖多少钱，能 charge user 每个月多少钱，比如说就说 OK， 那就是你就放一个这个monthly subscription price 在那，对吧？然后看看有多少人就真的去 sign up， 那你可能就是说10块钱，比如说有10个人 sign up， 那比如说你升高到比如说100块钱。可能就是一个人或者都没有人 sign up， 这个时候你就知道，就是也许100块钱就是这个价格太高。
挺好的。那个就是如果我想 Google 一下，看看别人是怎么 set up 这个 website 的，那个用什么 keyword 来 Google 一下，我能看到别人怎么做的。
对，就是你做的时候，就是确保就是你在这个 advertising， 在那个 ads， 在 Google 或者那个 Facebook 那上面 ads 那些关键字。是跟你这个 landing page 上面提到的这些 benefit 这些关键字是一致的，对吧？别人来了之后一看，哦，你就相当于就 landing page 有些比较细化的这个描述到底给用户带来什么，但就是说那些关键字这个是一致的。
好，
对，
谢谢你。
好，不客气。
好的，行，下面还有对，还有 Anthony Lay。Hello，Anthony，你可以，我 unmute 你了，你可以提问的。Okay, let's go back to chat room. So, okay. There's a question called what is landing page and how to spell?
Landing page, LAND, landing page.
Landing, okay.
Landing page, yes.
Okay, and Anthony, are you good to go? Okay, let's move on. Okay, so Derek, Derek Wang, yeah.
那个就是一个相关的问题，是不是这个 landing page 就跟那个search engine optimization 是差不多，是不是
？search engine optimization 就是说，一般来说是你有产品之后呢，你会 optimize 你的这个你的 URL 啊，或者你的这些 tag 呀，或者你的这些 keywords 呀，就确保你在这个 search engine 在这个 search 的那个 keyword， 别人 search 某个 keyword 的时候，你的 page rank 比较高，这样就是说可以就是让别人就是你可以 generate organic 这个 traffic， 对吧？它就是说跟这个 landing page 的这个不太一样，因为一般 search engine optimization 就是说你已经有 product， 你已经开始卖了，然后你去 optimize 你的 web page， 通过这个 URL， 通过你的这个 keyword， 通过你的这些这个 backlinks 来增加你的这个 ranking 的这个 ranking， 就是让更多的人可以发现你，对吧？那那个 landing page 呢，相当于就是直接是跟你的 search 跟你的那些 ads， 比如说在 Facebook 或者是在你的那 Google 上你 launch 那些 ads 是直接对应的。一般来说，别人不太容易发现你这个 landing page， 因为这只是一个 temporary 的东西嘛，对吧？而且就是说这东西的上面东西内容非常有限，都是一个就是相当于就这么2-3个 bullet point 就讲我的产品能给你做什么。你不太可能通过 search engine optimization 来 generate 这个 organic 这种 traffic。对，因为你相当于你就是说，你这个 landing page 是怎么用的？就是你有一个 idea， 然后你 come up with the keywords， 你用那些 keyword 做一些 ad， 别人一看到这个 ad， 他要对你这个感兴趣，他会 click 的时候就到你这个 landing page， 对吧 ？landing page 上面一般有个 sign up form， 然后你让别人留下个 email 之类，你看一个就是看你 click through rate 多少，另外一个看你这个那个 sign up rate 多少，比如说100个人到了你的这个 landing page， 但是没人 sign up， 那就是说也许就是说你这个产品并不是提供太多的这个价值给那些潜在的客户。
好的，明白了，谢谢。
对。
Okay, thanks for question. And okay, next one is Gary Hu.
听得到我说话吗？
听得到。
好，谢谢。
我
觉得这个说的非常好啊，但是我有一个问题，因为我也是在西雅图地区，对吧？那我们有一个产品，如果我很想知道现在这种情况下，就是现在这个 pandemic 情况下，有什么样的好的方式去接触到这个VC 或者是 advisor 这样的？比如说我们有一个 idea， 我有一个产品，对吧？但是呢，我们自己 run 得很嗨好，觉得挺好的，但是这个 marketing 可能不是这样子。那我觉得可能 VC 的，因为他们见的比较多嘛，他可能会给你很多的 feedback。你如果说你去路演1个2个，大家的 feedback 不好，你可能就是另外一个角度可以看自己的产品。那我想请教一下，你有没有什么资源分享一下？比如说advisor 啊之类的，或者说你能不能够做一个 advisor， 什么时候能不能跟你聊一聊？或者说你有没有一个 group， 那能够做这个 advisor 啊，或者是我们怎么能够接触到这个这样一些 VC 呢？有什么样的渠道呢？谢谢。
OK， 不客气。So VC 呢，就是 they are not in the business to give you advice， 对吧？就是 VC 的时间很有限，他的就是 VC 这些 GP work for LP， 就是比如说像我作为一个 LP， 我给钱给那个 GP 他不会说 go around 就整天 offer 这个 advice 给很多的 startup， 他如果给你 advice， 他一般是给 advice 就是他已经决定要投资你了，他这时候给你很多 advice， 因为这个时候因为 GP 的这个它的 performance is measured by how much money they are making for LPs. They need to answer for LPs， 对吧？所以就是说that's not their business to give you a lot of advice， 对吧？至于说就是你要是如果想跟 VC 接触，想看看他们是不是有兴趣投资 ，OK， 一般来说你通过这个你直接给他们送 email 没有用，因为这个年代就是说这个 cold email， 就VC 每天都收到很多的这种 email， 他基本上直接就扔垃圾桶，对吧？一般来说，你要跟这个 VC 接触，你要通过这种 hard intro， 对吧？要么就通过这个 LP， 对吧？要么就通过这个 VC， 就是你就是在这个领域认识的人，然后就是说 OK， 就比如说我时不时会给这些 Seattle 一些 VC， 有些 startup 找到我觉得 idea 不错，一般我会 make 一个 hard intro 就是 someone you know well， 对吧？这个时候别人一看是比如说Kevin 介绍来的，他会就说认真看一下，对，就是说。然后就跟你会有个 follow up 的 meeting， 就是了解一些新的细节。他如果决定就是有兴趣投资你，这个时候他会跟你进一步的跟进。他如果没有兴趣跟你 meeting 之后没有兴趣，他不会给你一些很多的 advice。这对他来说，他没有时间去做这个，对吧？所以就是说，至于说你要是如果想听我个人的一些看法，就是我基本上做这些都 free 的，就是都是这个，因为时不时会有朋友介绍一些就是他有一个 startup idea 或者说怎么着，这个产品你帮他看一下。我就是一般就是说用我自己的时间，就是业余时间，我说OK， 我就给你一些 free advice， 就是你可以就是可以会后跟我直接 email 或者这个微信联系，我可以就是给你一些 free advice。对，如果就是这个 idea 不错的话，你需要 VC， 我可以做一些介绍。
非常感谢，那我看会和你联系一下。好，谢谢。
不客气。
Okay, we have another question from Q&A board, and I heard we should talk to the customer directly on validating ideas. 2 questions about that. First one, how do we find a specific segment of customers for specific industry? Example, B2B software, how do we even know who is the purchasing manager? And the second question is, how do we know who we find the right customer? So, okay, I think that the question will be like, just how can I find the target of the product or services, and whether or not, how do I know it's the correct one?
Yeah. So the good news and the good news is there's a lot of like nowadays because of social media, there's so many ways you actually can find those like your potential like users. The bad news is like competition is high, the noise level is high. There's a lot of startups out there because the bar for startup is so low. Anyone can start a company, right, in minutes or hours, right? So the way you're gonna get some initial customer is, I've seen this many times, is you start with your own network, right? It's like you just like, first of all, if you are pursuing some B2B ideas, you already have some insight, you already have some industry experience and connections in that industry, right? So tap into your network first, right? And then you ask your network to make introductions for you, right? It's just like, okay, do you know anyone might be able to leverage or take advantage of your product or service, right? And after you exhaust your first degree and second degree, you can start using the social media to reach out, right? It's like Twitter is a great way, right? If you actually believe you have a value to the value, very like a strong value proposition, you can reach out people on Twitter, on LinkedIn, right? It's like that, those kind of social networks, like they didn't exist before. That's not a channel for you, but nowadays they can be a channel for you, right? And you can also just like if you're in a B2B, trade show is also another way to for you to get to know more people, right? Because every industry they have a bunch of trade shows, right? And you can go there to shake some hands and just try to talk to people to see they're interested in the product, right? And also you can do some advertising, right? It's like there's like Google AdWords, and there's like the trade, every industry they have trade magazines, right? You can do some advertising there. Right? There's many ways actually you can reach out to potential like buyers.
Yeah, okay. Hope like Kevin's answer your question. So yeah, and okay, I found like another question from chat room, like can we get your WeChat account?
Oh, WeChat account? Yeah.
So you want to share your screen, or like I can share over?
How do I share my WeChat screen?
Oh yeah. Do you have any like QR code something?
Oh, okay. I can put it on my. Okay, hold on.
Or WeChat ID.
Yeah. Oh, WeChat ID. Yeah, it's okay. Let me just on the chat window. Let me share my WeChat ID.
Yeah. You can just type in the chat room. Yeah.
I just sent.
Yeah. That's good. So like, I can see that. Okay, everyone like if you want like the Kevin's WeChat ID, you can just see as Happy Trails, right? Okay. Okay. Another question. Okay, Derek Wang. Yeah.
因为就是一个marketing 的问题，比如说我想做那个 email campaign 的话，这个里边比如说我可以从一些公司买到我的一些目标客户的 email，然后我给他发 email， 这里边有没有什么法律问题在里边？就是说我可以发或者不可以发？
就是说是这样，就是说 email 你第一次发没问题，但就是说一般来说你现在的这个 regulation 就是说你一般在发的一个 email 里面都有这个 opt out， 就是说你第一次发可能可以，但就是说你必须这个 offer 这个 opt out option。另外一个就是说 email 是不是一个 good marketing tool？ 就是 email 以前我就说你的 open rate 是30 to 40% 的时候 ，absolutely right you need to do that。现在的 email click through rate 就是可能1%就算不错，1%、0.5%，对吧？这个时候你要想是不是值的？你想想，就是你像我每天都会收到不少这样 email， 那我直接就过滤掉，一般就直接 block 这个人或者这个 domain， 对吧？所以因为这种 cold outreach 基本上就是 because it's a very saturated channel， 这个已经非常饱和了，这个 channel 就是说只是 noise。对吧？现在我不可能就是 buy something 就是 for my company, for my team, for my organization because somebody cold email me. No, it doesn't work anymore. Same thing with the like phone marketing， 就是很多时候以前就是说 ，OK，I want to buy a list of all North America like IT directors phone number， 对吧？和他的 email， 然后你就开始给人打电话。你想象一下，就是 what's the chance you actually people buy something because you're cold calling people， 对吧？所以一般我如果接到 cold calling， 我第一个就告诉他 ，my phone is on the do not call list。If I see you call me again, I will report to FCC. Your company going to get $10,000 fine， 对吧？所以this email and the cold email, cold call, it used to work, right? Maybe 20 years ago, not anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I think like the Kevin just like typed to the host and the panelists. So okay, I also like the make a reply with his ID in the chat room. So everyone should be able to see it by now. Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Okay, so far so good. Okay, yeah, is there any other question or like the okay, looks good right now. Okay. Yeah. Okay. There was like the question says, okay, saying like how to gain industrial insights is through work.
Yeah, industrial insight is like, it can be through work or can be through some of your unique like a personal experience, right? For example, like this year we have a tech stock company I just mentored, and so the founder, he was like a refugee from Vietnam, right? He didn't go to school like until he was 9 or 10 years old, right? And he actually fled the country after Saigon fell, right? And he came to the US and he started this like education like the program, right? It's like in like 10 different cities, right? So you have your own unique like life experience, and you appreciate like how important education is for you, right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be through work, right? So I talk about like the Airbnb and Uber. So none of it is from their work. It's just like their personal like life experience. They feel the pain point. So, but most people just say, oh, it's painful, I didn't get a cab. But those two guys, they took it one step further. Just say, okay, how are we going to be able to solve the problem?
Sarah's follow-up comment. So I guess what David asked is that the skill set required in work is not totally different from skill set required in startup. So
yeah, so it's a little bit different, right? Because let's say we have a lot of software engineers in the Seattle area, right? So your skill set most likely is just how to build software. Right? But in a startup world, so you're mostly relying on your soft skill. Yes, you're still gonna use some of the hard like technical skills, but you're gonna rely more heavily on the soft skills. So, for example, it's like you need to be able to connect to people and influence them without authority, right? Because you connect to investor, you don't have authority over them, right? But you have to be able to convince them, have to be able to influence them like in a genuine way, right? Not trick them, not lying to them. Because as I said, it's like your personal professional reputation is number one, right? You always tell the truth, right? So it's very different skills, but I would say it doesn't mean you cannot acquire some of the skills at work, right? It's like, because when you work with other people, you need to practice that skill. How are you going to be able to influence other people, right? How are you going to present? Like it's important you're going to be able to present to people and then just like in a convincing way.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Okay. Next question. Okay, another question is about like the number of co-founders. So yeah. Kevin, like, should we have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 co-founders, or is the 2 the best in general, or is there a reason for that?
So let me give you a quick view what Techstars companies like a co-founder like compensation. Like most tech start companies, they come in with 2 and sometimes 3 co-founders. Rarely they have a 4 co-founder, and rarely they admit people with just 1 co-founder, one founder. Okay, so the reason is if you just 1 founder. So remember what I said earlier, what they're looking for. One can build a product, the other one can sell. So build product and sell a product is two very different skills, right? I mean, in this world, maybe one person can do it. That would be Steve Jobs. Like he probably can build it and sell it, but he actually still have someone else to help design a product whatsoever, right? So it's more likely it's like you're gonna need 2 co-founders. Like one knows is really good at building the product. They can turn any ideas into like a prototype and a product quickly. And then the other guy really know how to market, how to sell a product, right? So once you get to 3, it's still manageable, right? And once you get to 4, it's just very hard to get 4 or 5 people just think the same way. Right? It's easier just like 2 people, like they just reach some consensus and move forward, right? Once you get to 3 is still manageable, but 4 and 5, it's gonna be very hard to get everyone just moving in the same direction. And if you have like 1 or 2 people just in your co-founding group decide to quit, it's gonna hurt your company, right? So because now it's like, okay, this guy has a bunch of shares, and it's like, okay, and if you guys think, let's say he worked there for a year, he has a bunch of shares, right? Has certain percentage of shares. So for VC, if this person left the company but still has a shares, those are dead shares. They are not motivating the company to grow, right? It's a little red flag. They don't want to invest in those companies. They want to see all the shares are in play to help to grow the company. Yeah, so I would say ideally 2 to 3 co-founders. That's probably the best.
Yeah, it's a subtle balance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Is there any other question? Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Okay, looks good. So, okay, and so I think Kevin already shared his like WeChat ID. So any you can like raise your question or have any like the chat with him offline. Yeah. So like, oh sorry, I see another question, a follow up. So do we? Okay. Here's the last question for tonight. So do we need lawyers at all to make a bulletproof company by law?
So you need a lawyer to get your company like incorporated, and you also you can't really hire or afford like full-time lawyer, right? But you're gonna need a lawyer like a retainer, and they can help you to review the contract, review like a product release, like those like for example like NDAs, and just like when you just like when you release a product, usually have some legal documents around that as well. And especially when you go through funding, you're gonna need a lawyer for sure, right? If you raise a round, and initially you probably don't need a lawyer. For example, if you just raise like before you raise a price round, so that means those like convertible notes. Convertible notes is like there's like standard form like used by YC and textile companies. You can even download it online, right? Essentially, they just say, okay, so when you actually raise a price round, I will convert this like my dollars into like certain shares, right? And then with some discount or with a cap, right? If you just raise convertible note, you probably don't need a lawyer. But initially, when you incorporate a company, you need a lawyer. And once you start just like signing some contracts with like with the customer, with partners, you need a lawyer. And when you actually go through the funding with the VCs, angel rounds, and you're gonna need a lawyer, right? You don't need a full-time lawyer, but you're gonna need lawyers like a service.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So like I think that question conclude our tonight's tech talk. And okay, I see the questions are where the slide be shared at the WeChat group. So normally we do not share any like the presentation slide in WeChat groups. But like you can talk with like Kevin like offline. So about like the some point or any like the question or confusion here. Yeah. Okay. I think that's the last question. Okay. Cool. Okay. Thanks everyone like for joining tonight's tech talk, and yeah, and also thanks Kevin like for sharing so good the stuff with us about how to start, how to making us the first step for our startup. Yeah, cool. Thanks everyone.
Thank you all. Nice
yeah.
meeting you all.
Okay, have a good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.